All right, I am literally convinced that the iPad mini 7 is the best iPad ever made. And honestly, I sort of think I might be a little bit biased towards the iPad mini because A, the iPad mini 6 was already my favorite, and the fact that the iPad mini 7 has seen some improvements over that sort of makes me either a little bit biased or fanboy or somewhere in between. But even since launch, I have gotten even more value from the iPad mini 7 over top my original review, which was already sort of a love letter. Now, you might ask why there's any difference between my last review and this one and how I've sort of fallen more in love with it, but it's because I'm using a dumb phone now. I'm that guy that decided to ditch his iPhone and go with a dumb phone because my crippling addiction to social media. It wasn't that serious in all honesty, but again, I just sort of wanted to switch things up and go with a dumb phone. With that, I sort of lean heavily on my iPad mini 7 for literally everything that you might want to think of that you would use on an iPhone, I now do on my iPad, but it is a little bit different because my screen time has dropped dramatically despite having a larger display. The thing about this phone is that it's a full-on Android phone, but the screen is so flippin' small that I'm not really gonna be doom scrolling Instagram and all that. And Instagram on an iPad is garbage, if you might be aware. If you've ever tried downloading it, it looks like trash. And where the iPad mini 7 comes in specifically is the fact that it's not really trying to be something else, meaning it's just being a tablet, a small, compact, powerful tablet. It's not trying to be a computer or a desktop replacement, despite its capacities to sort of do some of those desktop level things. It's just so tiny and its footprint is so handleable, it's hard not to love. And again, that's why I think the iPad mini 7 is the best iPad ever made. I do also want to give a huge thanks to Paperlike for sponsoring today's video, but more on them in a bit. Now, the thing about this iPad, what makes it so feasible, again, is the fact that it's just so darn small. Again, it's in the name itself being a mini iPad, and that's sort of what makes it charming, if that makes sense. And by far, it's definitely not the most powerful iPad, but at the same time, it is incredibly capable with near desktop level performance while still being incredibly tiny. Because of its size, I am now that guy at the office who walks around with an iPad mini in my back pocket because it really is just that portable. And again, while I'm there, it covers me for every single thing I might want to do. And separately from the actual size, it is still built incredibly well, as Apple does with just about all of their products. Honestly, it's just incredibly thin for all that it does, and it feels like a premium product in hand. There's no scenario for myself where this doesn't feel like a good product, and even using something like an Apple Folio case still keeps the profile incredibly thin, so just something I appreciate, and it is definitely a premium feeling product. Sure, from like a display standpoint, it could have been maybe a little bit bigger this year with some thinner bezels, but it doesn't particularly bother me, at least for my use case. And again, since I am now on a dumb phone, just because I want to reduce my screen time doesn't mean I'm having no screen time, and I can say the screen on the iPad mini 7 is actually still pretty incredible. And I know people love to sort of complain about 60 hertz and jelly scrolling and all that, and I don't even really want to talk about it at this point because if you care about that, the iPad mini 7 really just isn't for you to begin with. Still, for me, in that case, the iPad mini 7 display is still incredibly good. In pretty much every use case for myself, at least, it's been more than bright enough for pretty much everything, and the colors do look amazing on this display. While the display is just over 8 inches, I do find this a great balance in terms of usability. In my use case, at least, it's absolutely perfect for any sort of handheld media, and it's the iPad I pick up and take with me just about anywhere I go. And sure, while a larger display would definitely be better for any sort of multitasking, I use the split screen on this iPad literally every day for hours, particularly if I have YouTube up on one side for some sort of entertainment or music, and then my notes on the other side, which I use every day, all day at work. Overall, it's an absolutely solid display. The only downside, I think, is that when you do use your Apple Pencil on the display, it sort of feels slippery right out of box, which is where today's video sponsor Paperlike comes in. You might have heard of them actually quite a bit, mainly because they're pretty much the go-to screen protector when it comes down to anybody who wants that paper-like feeling on their display. And even without them sponsoring this video, I use Paperlike on every single iPad I've ever owned. They truly are the best when it comes down to screen protectors you put on your iPad that will give you that paper-like feeling while writing with your Apple Pencil. With this screen protector, at least, their nano dot technology not only gives you that paper-like feeling, but also still lets your display look awesome while reducing both glare and fingerprints. And honestly, as somebody who does work a day job as an accountant, I take a ton of notes on the daily. And again, this does make that experience with the Apple Pencil a whole lot better. And again, personally, having used Paperlike for years at this point, I haven't noticed any sort of additional wear and tear on my Apple Pencil tips, which is always a huge bonus if you are worried about that. And since this screen protector is only 12 millimeters thin, all your inputs with your Apple Pencil still feel incredibly precise. So yeah, yeah, Paper Lake's pretty much perfect for any sort of artists, students, or note takers like myself, and they're so certain you're gonna love it, there is a 100-day money-back guarantee. So if you do want to check it out, I will leave a link down below in the video description, and thanks again to Paper Lake for sponsoring today's video. So getting back to the iPad and how I actually use it on the everyday, I wasn't joking when I say I use it for pretty much every single thing. Again, not having an iPhone and all, this iPad gives me things like FaceTime, iMessage, group message, and pretty much just general apps. It's funny how you get used to having those things like emails and web browsing and even something simple like YouTube on your smartphone. But having a dumb phone and all, this is an absolute lifesaver on the daily. And this is probably why I'm a little bit more biased towards loving this iPad. But with that comes its portability. One of the things I was not expecting to love about this is the fact that it has Final Cut Pro now. I know not everybody out there is a creator when it comes down to using an Apple product, but for myself, it just removes so much friction. A huge part of actually creating content is the friction behind creating content. And for myself, all of my short form content that I've done recently in the last couple weeks have all been done on the iPad mini 7. For myself, at least, it's as simple as shooting my footage, popping in an SD card into the USB port, and I start editing pretty much immediately and share all from the same iPad. With that, the social media apps on here like Instagram are absolutely trash. Of course, they don't even have a native one. Not sure what's up with that, but it doesn't bother me too much because again, I am trying to cut back on my screen time. But separately from that, again, I'm a huge note taker. I use this a ton for media, and something as simple as a Pomodoro timer when I'm doing any sort of productivity. It's just an absolute beast when it comes down to all of those. One of the things I know a lot of people don't actually care for is Apple Intelligence, mainly because it's not fully out yet. And I did mention this in my previous review. I'm an absolute Apple diehard convert. I was skeptical before, but as of right now, I absolutely love it as of iPadOS 18.2. So definitely something to be excited for when it does hit public release. For myself, I love using this primarily in Apple Notes, notification summaries, alongside using this for its general ChatGPT integrations. But yeah, that's my daily use case. As for how it performs and all of that, it's easy to say it pretty much shreds through anything I've thrown at it. When it comes down to things like gaming, this thing does incredibly well. I'm not much of an iPad or a mobile gamer entirely, but of course I did test that out having a new shiny thing when it first launched, and it does an incredible job on things like Diablo Immortal. And outside of gaming, something that I have grown to appreciate is how quickly this actually exports projects from Final Cut Pro. Despite those projects being a little bit smaller, it does it incredibly quick. And obviously, since it does do a great job at those heavier tasks, naturally all the daily stuff like browsing the web, swiping through your UI, it's all going to be near instant. But yeah, so far there hasn't been a single thing that I've thrown at this that the iPad 7 hasn't been able to do. And that's not to mention that the camera and speaker on here are actually still pretty decent. Of course, the camera isn't going to replace your smartphone, but it's actually going to be better than my dumb phone. So the camera on here I've actually started using a little bit more. So not only am I the guy with an iPad in my back pocket, I have become an iPad shooter because it's the best camera I have on me most times at this point. Still, it does well enough. And again, I am a huge FaceTime user, so I love Center Stage, which does an incredible job keeping everything in frame. And the speakers do a great job. Again, I take my iPad with me pretty much everywhere in my home, whether I'm cooking, I'm listening to music, or if I'm in the shower or something. This is pretty much my go-to all-in-one media hub. Now, talking about the battery life, I am actually pretty impressed with it, mainly because I assumed having all the usages that I use this for, it would have been absolutely atrocious. Maybe I wouldn't get through a single day, but I typically get a day and a half out of one single charge, even using it as much as I do on the regular day-to-day. So yeah, it's definitely exceeded my expectations. With that, of course, this whole review sort of seems overly positive or fanboyish, but I think I might literally be the absolute most pinpoint direct demographic for the iPad mini 7 because of how much I rely on it. Again, as somebody who's using a dumb phone right now, the next step up to get me connected to pretty much anything and everything I need, from apps to FaceTime to emails to web browsing, is the iPad mini 7. Now, of course, there are more larger and more powerful iPads, but the size alone and the power that this has, again, everything that it does, is why I've sort of fallen in love with it. So yeah, I can probably say I'm a fanboy because I rely on it so heavily, and it most definitely is the best iPad ever made. But let me know what you guys think. Is this thing overrated? I know lots of creators love to talk about the iPad mini 7 like it's the best thing ever, but I think it's because it's the most unique iPad across the sea of large display tablets. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I appreciate you guys sticking around till the end, and thanks again to Paper Lake for sponsoring today's video. I'll catch you in the next one.